The email came in at 2:11 a.m., which is how I know God still has a sense of humor. It was one of those automated messages with no warmth in it, the kind that begins with congratulations before it has any right to congratulate anybody. I was sitting at my kitchen table in Asheville, North Carolina, wearing an old gray cardigan with one missing button, drinking coffee that had gone cold an hour earlier because sleep and I had stopped being on friendly terms after my wife died. The subject line said, "Final closing confirmation, Mercer property." Mercer property. Not Margaret's house. Not 38 Linden Avenue. Not the place where my wife kept blue hydrangeas alive through 3 bad summers by talking to them like misbehaving children. Mercer property. I clicked it once, then I clicked it again, because older men are allowed to distrust computers before they distrust their own children. The closing was scheduled for Friday at 10:30 a.m. Line of Discod. At Blue Ridge Title and Escrow on College Street. Seller, listed as Caleb Mercer. Buyer listed as High Lantern Holdings, LLC. Sale price, $412,000. Earnest money, $18,500. Commission, 5.5%. Attached documents included a seller's affidavit, a limited power of attorney, and something labeled spousal estate authorization. My wife had been dead for 14 months. I sat there for a while. That is not a dramatic sentence, but it is an accurate one. I sat there with my left hand around Margaret's old Parker 51 fountain pen, burgundy barrel, gold-filled cap, tiny dent near the clip from when she dropped it on the kitchen floor in 1998, and blamed the cat. We did not own a cat. I will not be taking questions about that. I read the email 3 times. Then I folded the corner of a paper napkin into a square, then another square, then a smaller one, because when my hands are busy, my mouth has a better chance of staying shut. Here's the thing about betrayal. People think it arrives like thunder. It does not. Not usually. It arrives like mail. It arrives with a PDF attachment. It arrives in polite language written by someone who has no idea they are carrying a knife into your kitchen. My name is Harold Mercer. I am 67 years old. I spent 38 years as a property insurance underwriter, which means I made a living reading documents that other people signed too quickly. Roof age, flood exclusions, replacement cost clauses, all the little paragraphs where the truth hides because most people get tired before they reach the bottom of the page. Margaret used to say I could smell a bad form through an envelope. She was exaggerating, mostly. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. Margaret and I bought the house on Linden Avenue in 1986 for $71,900, which felt like robbing a bank in reverse. It sat in Montford, not the polished Montford people photograph now, but the old version, where porches sagged, azaleas grew wild, and half the neighbors knew your business before you did. It had cedar siding that needed work, a front door painted the color of weak tea, and a kitchen window that stuck every August. Margaret loved it before the realtor finished unlocking the back door. "This one?" she said. I said. "You haven't seen the upstairs bathroom," she said. "I saw the magnolia tree." That was Margaret. Practical enough to track every grocery receipt in a little green notebook, foolish enough to make a 30-year decision because a tree had white flowers. We raised 2 children in that house. Our daughter, Emily, came first. Steady child. Quiet eyes. She teaches 4th grade now in Weaverville, and still writes thank you notes by hand like she is secretly 82. Caleb came 3 years later, all knees and appetite and bright ideas. If Emily entered a room like a question, Caleb entered like a marching band. He was the child who could talk a neighbor into buying lemonade in January. He once sold my own socket wrench back to me for $2 because he had improved the grip by wrapping it in electrical tape. He was 9, I paid him. That may have been my first mistake. Margaret adored him in the specific way mothers sometimes adore difficult sons. Not blindly. She saw him. She saw the shortcut in him, the charm, the way he could apologize with one side of his mouth already planning the next thing. But she also saw the little boy who carried injured birds home in shoeboxes and cried when they died. Caleb is going to need firm edges. she told me once. We were standing in the kitchen at Linden Avenue, maybe 2003, maybe 2004. She was making biscuits and had flour on her wrist. I was reading a claim file about hail damage in Hendersonville. I said, "He'll grow out of it." She looked at me over her glasses. "Harold, just my name." Quietly. I closed the file. Margaret had a way of saying my name that could make me feel both married and corrected. It was efficient, beautiful, the way certain storms are beautiful because they clear the air without asking permission. Caleb did not grow out of it. He grew into better clothes. By 39, he owned Mercer Ridge Renovations, a small contracting company that started honestly enough. Deck repairs, kitchen remodels, bathroom tile. He had a white 2021 Ford F-150 with his logo on both doors, matte black letters, very sharp. He wore quarter-zip pullovers and expensive boots that had never met mud, unless mud had an appointment. I do not say that to mock him. Well, not entirely. A man can wear nice boots, but Caleb had begun assembling a life from a catalog, and catalog lives have monthly payments. After Margaret got sick, he became attentive in a way that made me grateful at first and uneasy later. He brought her soup from Green Sage Cafe. Always in those compostable containers, she said, tasted faintly like cardboard. He fixed the loose railing on the back steps. He sat at the foot of her bed and told stories about jobs he was bidding, clients who were impossible, inspectors who were jealous of his talent. Margaret listened. She always listened. Sometimes, when he left, she would rest her head back on the pillow and close her eyes. "He's scared," she said once. I said, "Of losing you?" She opened her eyes. "Of being ordinary. Think about that for a second." My wife was dying, thin as paper, and still she could put her finger on the truth with more gentleness than most people put on a bandage. She died on a Tuesday morning in March at 6:17. Rain tapped the bedroom window like someone trying not to intrude. Emily was holding her left hand. I was holding her right. Caleb was in the hallway on the phone with a client, whispering hard. I remember that because I remember everything about that morning, even the things I would rather misplace. The funeral was held at First Presbyterian downtown. Margaret had written most of the service herself, including the hymns, because she did not trust me to choose anything that did not sound like a Civil War documentary. Fair. I nearly chose one. Afterward, at the house, people brought casseroles like grief could be smothered under cheese. Caleb stood near the mantel, accepting condolences with one hand in his pocket. Emily washed dishes with her sleeves rolled up. I kept finding myself in rooms without knowing why I had entered them. Marlene Voss arrived carrying a covered dish and a face that said she had already decided everyone else was being too loud. Marlene was my oldest friend who had never been family, which is sometimes the more durable category. She had spent 31 years as a title examiner at the Buncombe County Register of Deeds before retiring with a pension, a bad knee, and a private belief that most legal disasters begin with somebody saying, "It's probably fine." She and I met after the 1993 storms, when half of West Asheville decided their roofs had been destroyed by hail, whether hail had visited them or not. I was buried in claim files. Marlene found a deed restriction that saved my company from paying a claim we did not owe, then called me Clipboard Man for the next 27 years. She also beat me in the church chili cook-off in 2011 using a recipe printed on the back of a bean can. She denies nothing. She says history belongs to the winners. At Margaret's reception, Marlene put the casserole on the counter and found me in the small back hallway, staring at the coat hooks. "You eating?" she asked. "No. Planning to." "No." She handed me a plastic fork. "Start with lying, then." That was Marlene. Practical mercy with elbows. For the first few months after Margaret died, I stayed mostly in the house on Linden Avenue, though Emily wanted me to move closer to her, and Caleb kept saying I should simplify. That was his word, simplify. It sounded harmless. So does bleach, until you smell too much of it. "Dad, that place is too much for you," he told me in July. We were on the porch, The magnolia tree had dropped thick leaves all over the walk. I was sweeping them into a pile with the old push broom Margaret had bought from Ace Hardware in 2008. The handle had a crack near the bottom wrapped in duct tape. Caleb leaned against the railing, scrolling his phone. "I'm not helpless," I said. "I didn't say helpless. You said too much. I'm saying it's a lot of maintenance. Roof, gutters, taxes, insurance. Mom wouldn't want you chained to a museum." Something in my stomach shifted. Not because he was wrong about the maintenance. He was not. The upstairs bathroom still had a slow leak behind the sink. The west gutter pulled loose every hard rain. Property taxes had climbed in a way that made me check the bill twice and then sit down. But he said museum, like it was an insult. I looked at the front window where Margaret used to hang small paper stars every December, slightly crooked because she said perfect decorations made a house look nervous. "It's not a museum," I said. Caleb sighed, and his jaw did that thing, that slow, grinding thing. "Dad, you know what I mean, and trust me." I did. I knew he saw the house as equity trapped inside wood. I knew his business had expanded faster than his books could support. I knew because he had asked me, twice, to invest. First $40,000 for equipment, then $75,000 for payroll float. Both times, I said no. Not because I did not love him, because love is not the same as becoming collateral. Fine is a word that sounds like a compliment, but is often just a lid on a pot. When I asked how the business was doing, Caleb always said, "Fine. Too fast. Too bright." By October, I had moved into a smaller place off Marymount Avenue, a brick ranch with 2 bedrooms, 1 stubborn furnace, and a mailbox that leaned left no matter what I did to it. I did not sell Linden Avenue. I cleaned it, visited twice a week, paid the utilities, and left Margaret's garden gloves on the laundry room shelf because some objects become load-bearing after a death. Caleb hated that. He never said hate. He said inefficient. He said emotional. He said opportunity cost. He said, "At some point, Dad, you have to stop living backward." I remember folding a napkin in half at that sentence. We were at Early Girl Eatery on Wall Street, breakfast plates between us. His eggs were untouched. Mine were getting cold. I said, "Your mother lived in that house." He said, "Mom is gone." The waitress appeared with a coffee pot and froze like she had walked into church during the wrong prayer. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I just looked at my son and said, "Careful." 1 word. He blinked. Then he looked away. That was the first red flag I admitted was red. There had been others, of course. A misplaced insurance notice. A contractor's truck outside Linden Avenue when no repairs were scheduled. Caleb asking where Margaret kept old estate papers, pretending he needed them for taxes. I gave him copies of nothing important. I am an old underwriter. We do not hand original documents to men with urgent voices. But I also did not imagine my son would try to sell his mother's house behind my back. That is the mercy parents give their children, even grown ones. We underestimate the damage they are willing to do because we remember them small. 2 weeks before the email, Marlene called me at 8:04 on a Monday morning. "Clipboard man," she said. "Did you authorize any title work on Linden?" I was rinsing a coffee mug. Blue ceramic. Margaret's favorite. Tiny chip on the rim. "No." A pause. "You sure?" "Marlene, I know. Stupid question." The water kept running over my hand. "Why?" She exhaled through her nose, which in Marlene language meant somebody had annoyed the Constitution. "Because a young woman at Blue Ridge Title called me asking if I remembered a boundary correction from 1997. Said they were clearing a sale file. I told her I'd look in my old notes. Then I asked whose sale file. I turned off the faucet. What did she say? She got careful. Careful is one of those words that grows teeth when the right person says it. She said, Mercer Property. Marlene continued. Linden Avenue. I stood there looking at the mug in my hand, and for one ridiculous second, I thought about how Margaret used to complain that I never dried the bottoms properly before putting mugs back in the cabinet. What else? I asked. She said Caleb was handling it. Nobody spoke for a moment. Outside, a trash truck groaned down the street, metal arms lifting bins like tired shoulders. Then Marlene said, softer, "Harold, tell me you knew." I looked at Margaret's Parker pen lying on the counter beside the grocery list I had not finished. "I didn't know it yet," I said, but something had already started moving without me. Marlene's voice changed then. "Lost its teasing edge. Do not call him first. I wasn't going to." "Yes, you were. You're a father. Fathers do hopeful, stupid things before breakfast." Fathers mild. "Almost. What should I do?" "You bring me every document Margaret ever signed about that house. Trust papers, wills, deeds, insurance schedules, tax bills, all of it. And Harold?" "Yes. Bring the originals." By 9:12, I had a banker's box open on my kitchen table. By 9:40, I had found the Mercer Family Residence Trust, dated the 18th of November, 2019, signed by Margaret in blue ink, witnessed properly, notarized clean. By 10:03, I found the paragraph I had not read since the week she made me sit at the dining room table and initial every page. The house could not be sold, transferred, pledged, or encumbered without written approval from the surviving spouse acting as sole trustee. That was me. My signature was not optional. My son either did not know that, or he thought he had found a way around it. I capped Margaret's pen and put it in my shirt pocket. Then I called Marlene back. She answered on the first ring. "Well?" she said. I looked at the trust papers, the email printout, the old deed, and the photograph on the mantel of Margaret standing under the magnolia tree in a yellow raincoat, laughing at something outside the frame. I said, "Let's find out how far he's willing to go." And Marlene, God bless that woman, did not tell me to calm down. She said, "Good, but we do it clean." That mattered. Because revenge is easy when you are loud. Justice takes better paperwork. Marlene's kitchen looked like every legal office should look if legal offices were honest. There were no leather chairs, no framed degrees, no receptionist whispering into a headset. Just a square oak table with one short leg, 2 mugs of black coffee, a plate of saltines, and a stack of property records she had pulled before I arrived because retirement, according to Marlene, was a scheduling suggestion, not a medical condition. She lived in a little house in West Asheville near Haywood Road, the kind with a steep driveway and wind chimes that sounded like spoons arguing. I arrived at 10:31 with the banker's box in both arms. She opened the door before I knocked. "You look awful," she said. "Good morning to you, too." "It is not a good morning." "Sit." That was the kindest thing she could have said. I put the box on the table. Margaret's trust papers were on top, inside a manila folder labeled in her handwriting. Margaret had beautiful handwriting. Tall loops, firm lines. Even her grocery lists looked like they had been raised properly. Marlene slipped on a pair of red reading glasses and held out her hand. I gave her the trust. She read without making a sound. That is how you know someone really understands documents. Amateurs mutter. Professionals go silent. I folded a napkin into a narrow rectangle, then pressed the edge flat with my thumbnail. Finally, Marlene tapped one paragraph with a silver mechanical pencil. "There it is." I saw it. "No sale without your written approval as sole trustee." "Yes." "No pledge, no transfer, no encumbrance." "Yes." "And Caleb is not trustee." "No." "Successor?" "Only after my death or incapacity." She looked up over the glasses. "You feeling incapacitated?" "Not today." "Good. Try to keep that up." "You know what I did?" I laughed. It came out once, dry and wrong, like an old door opening in a house nobody lives in anymore. Marlene did not laugh with me. She turned back to the papers. "Did Margaret tell Caleb about this?" "I don't know." "You don't know, or you don't want to know. There are friends who comfort you by lying." Marlene was not afflicted with that weakness. I leaned back and looked at the ceiling fan turning slowly above us. One blade had dust along the edge. I noticed because grief makes your brain take attendance of useless things. Margaret believed in telling people what they needed to know when they needed to know it, I said. "That means no." "That means probably no." Marlene nodded. "Then, either he guessed wrong, or somebody helped him guess around it. That sentence landed harder than I wanted it to. Because Caleb, for all his faults, was not a paperwork man. He was charm, momentum, handshakes, glossy estimates, and photographs of finished kitchens posted online before the grout had cured. He knew how to sell confidence. He did not know how to build a fraudulent real estate file alone. I mean that literally. A house sale leaves tracks, title search, payoff requests, tax certifications, lien affidavits, identity verification, preliminary settlement statements, email chains, notary logs. People think paperwork is boring until it becomes a trail of footprints across wet concrete. Marlene spread the documents into piles. Deed, trust, insurance, tax bills, Margaret's death certificate, my power bills for Linden Avenue, the original $1,986 closing statement with our down payment circled in Margaret's green pen. Who else had access? She asked. To what? To Margaret's papers. Emily, maybe. She helped clean the bedroom closet. Emily wouldn't. No, I said it too quickly, and Marlene heard it. Harold, she wouldn't. I believe you, but belief is not a filing system. I looked at her. She held up one hand. Just one. We check everybody's possible access. That is not accusation. That is hygiene. Quiet power is not only how you speak to enemies. Sometimes it is how you allow a friend to tell you something you hate. Emily had helped me sort Margaret's clothes in May. She cried quietly into a navy cardigan for 8 minutes, then apologized to the cardigan. She boxed donation items by size, season, and condition. She found the old estate binder in the cedar chest and brought it to me without opening it. Dad, she had said, this looks important. That was Emily. Caleb came by that same afternoon and stayed 20 minutes. He walked through the house with his phone in his hand, making small comments. Original floors still look good. Lots bigger than I remembered. Crazy what these places are going for now. At the time, I thought he was trying to make conversation because grief had made us awkward around each other. Now I remembered his hand resting on the cedar chest. Something in my stomach shifted again. Marlene saw my face. What? Nothing. Don't nothing me. Men say nothing when the truth is putting on its coat. I told her about the cedar chest, about Caleb standing beside it, about how he had asked, 2 weeks later, whether Margaret had left anything weird in the estate papers. Marlene wrote that down. You kept a key at Linden? Yes. Who had one? Me, Emily, Caleb, Mrs. Dempsey next door. Mrs. Dempsey was 81, owned 2 indoor cats named Lewis and Clark, and had once called the police on a raccoon because she said it moved with intent. I was not worried about Mrs. Dempsey selling my house. Marlene wrote all 4 names anyway. By noon, she had called an old contact at the county office. By 12:27, she had pulled recent recordings connected to 38 Linden Avenue. Nothing had transferred yet. No deed recorded. No mortgage recorded. But there had been a request for certified copies of the 1,986 deed and Margaret's death certificate 3 weeks earlier. Requested by a courier service. Paid by Mercer Ridge Renovations. I went very, very quiet. Marlene did not fill the silence. She let it sit there between us like a 5th guest who had arrived without being invited. After a while, I said, maybe there's an explanation. She looked at me with the tired patience of a woman who had watched thousands of people donate their common sense to hope. There may be, she said, but we are not going to build him one. That was the difference between Marlene and me. I still wanted my son to be misunderstood. She wanted him documented. We ordered copies. We requested the notary information on the limited power of attorney, referenced in the title company email. Marlene told me not to contact Blue Ridge Title yet. Not directly. She said if a file was dirty, we needed to know how dirty before anyone had a chance to tidy the room. Then she asked about High Lantern Holdings, LLC. I told her I had never heard of it. She turned her laptop toward me. The North Carolina Secretary of State listing showed the company had been formed 8 years earlier. Registered agent, Rourke and Bell Legal Services. Principal office. A mailbox suite in Charlotte. Marlene clicked her tongue. That buyer didn't appear yesterday. No. Name mean anything to you? I stared at High Lantern Holdings until the words blurred slightly. No. That was true. Mostly. The name did not mean anything to me then. The registered agent did. Ethan Rourke had drafted Margaret's trust in 2019. He had been 35 then, sharp as a new blade, with the emotional warmth of a courthouse bench. Margaret liked him immediately. He doesn't decorate his sentences, she said after our first meeting. I said, that's what you like in a lawyer? That's what I like in men who handle death papers. Ethan used blue ink only. He said black ink made liars comfortable because photocopies could hide too much. I thought he was being theatrical. Margaret thought he was being sensible. As usual, she won by dying first, which is a terrible way to win an argument. I called Ethan from Marlene's kitchen at 1:08 p.m. His assistant put me through after 11 seconds. Mr. Mercer, he said. Is everything all right? No. A pause. All right. Tell me. I told him enough. Not in everything. Enough. When I said High Lantern Holdings, he went silent. Not confused silent. Recognizing silent. Ethan, I said. He exhaled. I need you in my office tomorrow morning at 9. Why? Because I need to confirm a few things before I answer that question, and because this call may become discoverable. There are sentences that do not raise their voice because they do not have to. I looked across the table at Marlene. She had stopped writing. Is High Lantern yours? I asked. No. Is it mine? Yeah? Another pause. In a manner of speaking, he said. Marlene's eyebrows went up. I felt the floor change under me. Not collapse. Change. Like stepping from carpet onto tile in the dark. What does that mean? It means Margaret planned further ahead than either of you gave her credit for, Ethan said. And it means your son may have just tried to sell your wife's house to an entity your wife created to protect it. I closed my eyes. For a second, I could see Margaret at the dining room table in 2019, tapping each page of the trust with her finger, making me initial places I wanted to skim. Harold, she had said then. Read it. I trust you. That is not the same as reading it. I had sighed like a man being asked to carry bricks uphill. She waited. So I read. Not enough, apparently. Or maybe enough for the moment and not enough for the future. Marriage is full of delayed instructions. Ethan told me to bring the full binder, the death certificate, and any correspondence from the title company. He also told me not to warn Caleb. He's my son, I said. I know. He may not understand what he's done. Then the documents will be educational. I almost smiled again. Almost. After we hung up, Marlene leaned back in her chair. Well, she said, your dead wife just entered the room. I touched the Parker pen in my pocket. She had a habit of doing that. We sat quietly for a minute. Outside, a delivery truck backed up somewhere down the street, beeping in slow, irritating intervals. Marlene got up, refilled both mugs, and set mine in front of me without asking. The coffee was strong enough to hold a grudge. Tell me about Caleb's business, she said. I did. Mercer Ridge Renovations had started in 2014 with a borrowed trailer, 2 ladders, and Caleb's ability to make homeowners believe he cared deeply about backsplash tile. For a while, he did care. I watched him work 12-hour days. I watched him come home with sawdust in his hair and pride in his shoulders. Margaret packed him sandwiches long after he was too old to accept them, and he accepted them anyway. Then came the bigger jobs. A historic bungalow restoration in Biltmore Village, a luxury cabin near Black Mountain, a restaurant build-out downtown that made him think he belonged in rooms with investors. By 2022, he was talking about scale. Scale is a word men use when they are about to become strangers to themselves. He leased office space, hired staff, bought the F-150, added a second truck, sponsored a youth baseball team with his logo on the jerseys. Margaret wore one of those jerseys to a game while she was sick, sitting under a blue umbrella, though there was no rain because the sun hurt her skin. Caleb knelt beside her chair that day and tied her shoelace. That is what makes betrayal complicated. The same hand that signs the wrong paper may once have tied his dying mother's shoe. I told Marlene about the payroll request, the equipment request, the way Caleb's eyes hardened when I said no. He told me I didn't believe in him. I said, "Did you?" "I believed in him." "I didn't believe his numbers." Marlene nodded. "Different thing." He didn't think so. They never do. 2 days later, I learned about the mechanic's lien from a supplier in Arden, $63,214 for unpaid materials. Then a private loan from a man named Victor Sloan, secured against Caleb's business assets at a rate that made my molars hurt. Then 3 bounced payroll checks in September, covered within 48 hours, but not before 2 employees started looking elsewhere. Each fact was small enough to explain. Together, they made a shape. A boat taking on water does not sink all at once. First, somebody moves a towel over the wet spot. At Ethan Rourke's office the next morning, the shape became clearer. His office was on the 2nd floor of a narrow brick building off Charlotte Street. No plants, no art except a framed map of Buncombe County from 1924. His desk was clean enough to make a person feel accused. He wore a charcoal suit and a blue tie. A blue pen sat perfectly parallel to a yellow legal pad. Marlene came with me because she said I was emotionally compromised and technically portable. I did not argue. Some insults are just logistics. Ethan reviewed the email, the trust, and Marlene's notes. Then he opened a locked cabinet and removed a thin file labeled High Lantern Holdings. "Your wife created this LLC as a preservation entity," he said. "It was designed to purchase or hold the Linden Avenue property if family pressure, creditor pressure, or incapacity ever put the house at risk." I stared at him. She did what? She was concerned the house might become vulnerable after her death. To whom? Ethan did not answer immediately. That was answer enough. I looked down at my hands. My right thumb had found the edge of a paper napkin from Ethan's coffee tray and was folding it into a square. She thought Caleb would do this? She thought Caleb might become desperate enough to confuse love with entitlement. The room became very still. Marlene looked away first, which was how I knew she was giving me privacy. I sat in my chair for a while. There it was again. That plain sentence. I sat there. The body has old wisdom. Sometimes it knows the world has changed before the mind catches up, so it makes you stay put. Ethan slid a document toward me. Margaret's signature was at the bottom. Blue ink. The 18th of November, 2019. Beside it was a handwritten note. "Harold will hate this. He will say I am borrowing trouble. I hope he is right. But if I am not, protect the house first and forgive me later." I read it once. Then again. Margaret had underlined protect, not punish. Protect. That mattered more than I wanted it to. I did not cry. Not there. I had cried enough in grocery store parking lots and once in the hardware aisle at Lowe's because I saw the brand of light bulb she liked for the porch. Grief is not dignified. It ambushes you near extension cords. But in Ethan's office, I just touched her note with 2 fingers. "Can Caleb complete the sale?" I asked. Ethan leaned back. "Not legally, but he thinks he can. Apparently. And the buyer?" Ethan's face did not change. "High Lantern has received a purchase contract through Blue Ridge Title. The offer was submitted by a broker representing Caleb as authorized seller." "Did you know?" "I received notice yesterday. I was preparing to contact you today." Marlene snorted. Ethan looked at her. She said, "Lucky timing. The official perfume of lawyers." "I will not be taking questions about how much I enjoyed that," Ethan continued. "If we stop this immediately, Caleb may claim confusion, misunderstanding, bad advice. If the goal is simply to prevent transfer, that is easy. And if the goal is to know exactly what he did, then we let the closing proceed far enough for the representations to be made on the record, with witnesses, while ensuring title cannot actually pass." Marlene folded her arms. "Clean?" "Very clean," Ethan said. "No traps outside the law. No deception from our side. We disclose High Lantern's trustee authority at the correct moment. We document everything." I looked at him. "So I let the closing happen." Ethan picked up his blue pen. You let him walk into the room believing paperwork is just a formality. The words should have satisfied me. They did not. Because beneath the anger, beneath the legal strategy, beneath the quiet machinery Margaret had built from beyond the grave, there was still a father remembering a boy with electrical tape on a socket wrench. That evening, Caleb called me at 6:43. I almost did not answer. Then I did. "Hey, Dad," he said, too cheerful. "How are you holding up?" Holding up. As if he had not spent the day trying to sell the roof under my memories. "I'm all right," I said. Good. Good. Listen, I may swing by Linden later this week. Just checking a couple things." "What things?" A tiny pause. "Gutters. You mentioned the west gutter." "I did." "Yeah. I figured I'd take a look." I stared through my kitchen window at the leaning mailbox outside my little brick ranch. "Caleb." "Yeah?" I said his name once, quietly. "What are you really checking?" His breathing changed. "Not much. Enough." "What do you mean?" "I mean what I asked." Another pause, then a small laugh. "Dad, don't do that underwriter thing." "What thing?" "Where you make a normal question sound like a deposition." I looked at Margaret's Parker pen on the table. "Is it a normal question?" He did not answer right away. Then he said, "I'm just trying to help." There it was. The sentence people use when they want gratitude for touching what is not theirs. "I know," I said. I did not know, or maybe I knew exactly. When we hung up, my phone buzzed with a new email from Blue Ridge Title. Updated settlement statement attached. Seller proceeds estimated at $386,742.19. Wire instructions pending. And beneath that, in the forwarded chain, Caleb had written one line to the escrow officer. "My father is aware and prefers not to be involved due to health reasons." I read it twice. Then I put the phone down carefully. Not because I was calm, because if I held it 1 second longer, my hand might tell the truth before the paperwork did. The first thing I did after reading Caleb's email was nothing. That may sound like weakness to some people. It is not. It is discipline wearing old slippers. I left the phone on the table, screen still glowing, and stood up slowly enough that my knees had time to object in writing. Then I walked to the sink, filled Margaret's blue mug with water, poured it out, and set it upside down on the dish towel. I had no reason to do that. The mug was clean. But sometimes a man needs one small task that can be completed correctly. Then I called Marlene. She answered with, "Tell me you didn't call him." "I didn't call him." "Good. I'm proud of you," which is uncomfortable for both of us. He told the title company I'm aware and not involved due to health reasons. For 2 full seconds, Marlene said nothing. Then she said, "I'm going to need you to repeat that without the part where I throw my phone." I read the line to her. "My father is aware and prefers not to be involved due to health reasons. There are lies that try to hide in the dark." This one walked into the room wearing a name tag. Marlene exhaled. "All right, that's useful." "Useful." "Yes. Ugly, but useful. He represented your knowledge, your consent, and your incapacity adjacent condition in one sentence." Efficient little disaster. I sat down. "My son told strangers I was too unwell to handle my wife's house. Harold, I heard it. No, hear me. Hurt later. Preserve now." That was Marlene's gift. She did not deny the wound. She just refused to let me bleed on the evidence. By 7:30 that night, she had me forwarding every message into a separate email folder labeled Linden. By 8:15, Ethan had sent instructions that sounded simple but felt like swallowing a stone. Do not respond to Caleb in writing. Do not contact Blue Ridge Title independently. Do not access the property in a way that could create confusion. Save everything. Photograph envelopes. Preserve metadata. Bring the original trust binder Friday morning. Friday. The closing was still scheduled for Friday at 10:30 a.m. That gave us 71 hours. You learn a lot about people in 71 hours. At 9:06 the next morning, Emily called. "Dad," she said, "is Caleb selling Mom's house?" I closed my eyes. She was at school. I could hear children in the background, that rising classroom sound of chairs scraping, pencils dropping. A little boy saying, "Mrs. Harlan." He took my eraser. Life, rude enough to continue. "Why are you asking?" "Because he called me last night." "What did he say?" "He said you were finally being reasonable. He said the house was becoming a burden, and you wanted it handled quietly because you didn't want everybody making it emotional." The word quietly did something to me. Caleb had taken my own shape and used it as a mask. "What else?" Emily's voice lowered. "He asked if I'd signed something saying I supported the sale." I sat very still. "Did you?" "No, Dad, no. I told him I wanted to talk to you first." My hand found a paper napkin near the salt shaker. I folded one corner, pressed the crease. "What did he do?" He got annoyed. Not loud, just polished. Polished. That was a good word for Caleb when he was cornered but not yet afraid. "He said I was letting grief make me sentimental," Emily continued. "He said Mom would have wanted us to use the asset wisely." The asset. Not the house. Not home. Not even property. The asset. I looked through my kitchen window at the little strip of grass beside the driveway. A robin hopped once, stopped, then stabbed its beak into the ground like it had urgent business. "Emily," I said, "listen carefully. Do not sign anything from your brother. Do not argue with him. If he calls again, let it go to voicemail." "Dad, what's happening?" There was a crack in her voice. She was 42 years old, a teacher, a mother of two, and still, for 1 second, she sounded 12. "I'm handling it. I know you say that when you don't want help. I'm saying it because it's true. Is he in trouble?" I looked at Margaret's Parker pen lying beside the trust binder. "He's making choices that come with consequences." Emily went quiet. Then she said, "Mom knew, didn't she? That one hurt differently. I think she worried. She always worried about him." "Yes. And you didn't want to." "No." There it was. No speech. No defense. Just the truth sitting between a father and daughter like an old photograph neither one wanted to frame. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "So am I." After we hung up, I drove to Marlene's house with the voicemail Emily forwarded from Caleb. He sounded smooth, warm, almost wounded. "I hate putting this on you, but Dad's not thinking clearly. You know how he gets with documents and Mom's stuff. I'm just trying to make sure we don't lose value while the market is still good. Call me back, okay? We need to be united on this." We. That word did more theft than the sale contract. Marlene played it twice, then saved it to a flash drive she labeled with the date. She still used a brother label maker from 2004 that printed crooked unless you slapped the side. She slapped it once. It obeyed. I envied the clarity of that relationship. "Layer 1, she said. "What?" "False representation to title." Layer 2, attempted family pressure. Layer 3, possible false authority document. "We need the fourth." I'm almost afraid to ask. The notary. By noon, Ethan had obtained a copy of the limited power of attorney from the closing file through the proper channel, which is lawyer language for slow enough to be legal and fast enough to be frightening. He called us into his office at 2:30. The document lay on his desk. Limited power of attorney. It claimed I had authorized Caleb to sell 38 Linden Avenue on my behalf. My name was typed cleanly. My signature was at the bottom, except it was not my signature. Not even close. A lazy forgery always insults you twice. First by stealing your name, then by assuming you write like a man signing for a package in the rain. My actual signature has an ugly high loop in the H because my third-grade teacher, Mrs. Bell, made me practice cursive until my fingers cramped. Margaret used to say my signature looked like a fence after a storm. This one was smooth, rounded, almost pretty. I pointed at it. "I don't write like that." Ethan nodded. "We'll get a handwriting expert if needed." Marlene leaned closer. "Notary?" Ethan turned the page. "Notary Public. Denise K. Waller. Commission active. County. Henderson. Date notarized. October 28. Location listed. Asheville." I stared at the date. October 28. 4:15 p.m. I knew exactly where I had been at 4:15 p.m. on October 28, because my dentist sends appointment reminders like he is coordinating a military operation. I was at Biltmore Dental Group getting a crown adjusted on the upper left side, and I had the receipt in my glove compartment because I keep receipts until they become fossils. I mean that literally. Marlene looked at me. "You're making the face." "What face?" "I have a receipt face. I have a receipt." Ethan actually smiled. Small, brief, unsettling, like seeing a bank vault wink. "Excellent," he said. By 3:12, I had retrieved the dental receipt from my 2013 Subaru Outback. Silver, 143,000 miles, small crack in the passenger side mirror from a grocery cart incident I still believe was personal. The receipt showed checkout at 4:47 p.m. We also had the appointment confirmation, the dentist's office log, and, because Asheville has become a place where even parking lots want documentation, a time-stamped credit card charge from the pharmacy next door at 5:03. At 4:20, Ethan's investigator called Denise Waller. He put the call on speaker after telling her who was present. Clean. Always clean. Denise sounded young, nervous young. Her voice had the brittle edge of somebody standing too close to a truth she wanted to step away from. Ethan asked whether she had notarized a power of attorney for Harold Mercer on October 28. "I notarize a lot of documents," she said. "I understand. Do you have your journal?" Pages moved. A pen clicked. "Yes. Please read the entry." A pause. "It says Harold Mercer. North Carolina driver's license verified. Document, limited POA. Fee, $10. Do you recall meeting Mr. Mercer?" Another pause. I don't remember every person." Of course. Marlene was watching my hands. I had stopped folding the napkin. That worried her more than the folding. Ethan said, "Mr. Mercer was at a dental appointment in Asheville at the listed time. He did not appear before you." Denise breathed in sharply. "I can't speak to that. Who brought you the document?" "I don't know." "Miss Waller." Silence. Then, very quietly, "It was already signed." Nobody moved. Ethan let the silence work. That is something good lawyers understand. Silence is not empty. It applies pressure. Finally, Denise said, "He said his father was in the car." Who said? "I don't want trouble." You may already have trouble. Accuracy is your best friend right now. Another breath. Smaller. Caleb Mercer. I looked down at the desk. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. There was nobody in that room left to convince. Denise continued, words tumbling now. "He said his father had mobility issues. He said he had his ID. He said it was urgent. I know I shouldn't have. I know. Ethan asked a few more questions, calm as rainfall on stone. She admitted she had never seen me. She admitted Caleb had paid the fee. She admitted she had written "personally appeared" because Caleb told her I was outside and embarrassed about being seen after a medical procedure. Medical again. That word had become Caleb's crowbar. When the call ended, Marlene put both hands flat on the table. "Well," she said, "there's the fourth." I did not answer. Inside my shirt pocket, Margaret's Parker pen felt heavier than a pen had any right to feel. That night, I drove to Linden Avenue. Not inside. Ethan had said not to disturb anything, and for once in my life, I obeyed a lawyer without muttering. I parked across the street under a maple tree at 8:38 p.m. The porch light was off. The magnolia tree stood in the yard, black leaves shining under the street lamp. A white truck was in the driveway. Caleb's F-150. He came out of the house carrying a cardboard box. For 1 second, I saw him at 16, carrying baseball gear through that same door, complaining that Margaret had washed his lucky socks and ruined his season. Then the streetlight caught the side of the box, and I saw writing in black marker. "Mom, office. My wife's office things." He opened his truck door and put the box inside. I sat in my car for a while. That is all. No explosion, No cinematic confrontation, just an old man in a Subaru, watching his son load his dead mother's papers into a truck like inventory. My phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. "Dad, just checking on Lyndon. Gutter looks worse. We should talk soon about next steps." I looked at him standing under the porch light he had just turned on, phone in his hand, lying to me from 27 yards away. Then I typed 3 words. "Yes, we should." I did not send anything else. He looked down at his phone, read it, and smiled. Not a cruel smile. That would be easier to explain. It was a relieved smile. A man thinking the door had opened. He had no idea the room behind it was already full. On Friday morning, I put on my navy blazer, the one Margaret said made me look less like an insurance man and more like an insurance man at a funeral. I placed the original trust binder in my leather satchel. I clipped Margaret's Parker pen inside my shirt pocket. I checked my dental receipt, Emily's voicemail file, Denise Waller's written statement, and the forged POA copy. Then I drove downtown. Blue Ridge Title and Escrow occupied the 3rd floor of a renovated building on College Street, above a coffee shop where people paid $6 for drinks with foam art. The elevator smelled like raincoats and burnt espresso. When the doors opened, Marlene was already there. So was Ethan. And through the glass conference room wall, I saw Caleb seated at the table in his charcoal jacket, tapping one polished boot against the floor, smiling at the escrow officer like the future had finally agreed to cooperate. Marlene touched my sleeve. "You ready?" I looked at my son. "No," I said. Then I opened the door anyway. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps if you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So, thank you for real. Caleb saw me before he saw Ethan. That detail matters. His face changed in 3 movements. First surprise, quick and bright. Then calculation, tucked behind a smile. Then irritation, so brief most people would have missed it. I did not. I had underwritten too many restaurant roofs and too many men's promises to miss the split second when a person realizes the facts have entered before they were invited. "Dad," he said, standing too fast. "What are you doing here?" I looked around the conference room. Blue Ridge Title had tried to make it warm. There was a bowl of peppermints on the credenza, a framed photograph of the Asheville skyline, and a fake plant in the corner that looked like it regretted its career. The table was long, glass-topped, and too clean. Documents were arranged in neat stacks in front of each chair. 2 pens lay beside Caleb's folder. Not blue pens, black. I almost smiled. Almost. The escrow officer, a woman named Priya Patel, stood halfway from her chair. She was maybe mid-40s. Careful eyes, navy dress, silver watch. Beside her was a younger assistant with a laptop open and both hands frozen above the keyboard. "Mr. Mercer?" Priya said. "Yes," I said. Caleb laughed once. "Dad, I told them you weren't coming." "I know." His smile tightened. "You feeling okay?" There it was again. Health. Frailty. The little blanket he kept trying to throw over me so nobody would see my hands were free. "I'm feeling informed," I said. Marlene coughed into her fist. It was not a cough. It was applause wearing a coat. Caleb looked past me and finally saw Ethan. His expression shifted again. "Why is he here?" Ethan placed his leather folder on the table. "I represent Mr. Mercer in matters involving the Linden Avenue property and the Mercer Family Residence Trust." Caleb blinked. "The what?" I watched him say it. I watched the lack of recognition arrive honestly. That was the cruel part. Some pieces of this he had planned. Some pieces he had only been arrogant enough not to check. Priya looked from Caleb to me. "Perhaps we should pause." "No," Ethan said. "Let's proceed carefully." Carefully is a word that can save people or trap them, depending on who is using it. Caleb sat back down slowly. "Okay," he said, spreading his hands. "Fine. Let's not turn this into a circus." "Dad, I was going to explain everything after the closing." I pulled out the chair across from him and sat. Marlene took the seat to my left. Ethan remained standing for the moment, which made him look less like a lawyer and more like a weather event. After, I said. Caleb leaned forward. Yes, after. Because I knew you'd get emotional if I brought it up too early. The assistant stopped typing. Priya's eyes lowered to the document stack. I folded my hands on the table. Not a napkin this time. No paper. Nothing to occupy me except the sight of my son wearing a watch I knew he could not afford. Say that again, I said. Dad, say it again. He swallowed. His jaw started that slow, grinding thing. I said you've been emotional. About my wife's house. Our family's house. That was new. Our. He had not called it that in months. I said, and you decided the least emotional solution was to sell it without telling me. Caleb's face flushed. I didn't do it without telling you. Priya looked up. Ethan opened his folder. I held up one hand, just one. Let him finish. Caleb took the gift because arrogant men often mistake restraint for permission. You knew the house was too much, he said. You knew it. We talked about it all summer. Taxes, repairs, insurance. You moved out, Dad. You weren't using it. I had a buyer ready. A good buyer. Clean offer. No inspection games. No dragging this out. I handled the hard part. He looked at Priya, then back at me, performing responsibility for the room. And yes, I used the power of attorney because I thought that's what you wanted when you said you didn't want to deal with paperwork anymore. Marlene's head turned slowly toward me. I had never said that in my life. Paperwork and I had survived 38 years together. We were practically related. I did not answer him. That made him talk more. You think I wanted to do this? Caleb asked. You think I wanted to be the bad guy? Somebody had to be practical. Emily sure wasn't going to. She still thinks Mom's recipe cards are sacred texts. She loved her mother, I said. So did I. The words came out sharp. For the first time that morning, I saw real feeling in him. Not enough to redeem what he had done. Enough to make it hurt. He looked down at the table. I loved her too, Dad. I know. And she would not want that house sitting empty while my company goes under. There it was. Not our family's house. Not my burden. His company. Priya's assistant shifted in her chair. Ethan wrote something on his yellow pad. I said, so this was about Mercer Ridge. Caleb's eyes snapped up. No. It was about the family. Which part of the family gets the wire? He stared at me. The proceeds were going to stabilize things. What things? Payroll. Supplier obligations. Bridge debt. Victor Sloan? His mouth opened, then closed. That name did what no accusation had done. It touched the hidden bruise. How do you know about Victor? Marlene leaned back slightly, satisfied. I said, I read. Caleb let out a small, bitter laugh. Of course you do. You read everything except your own son. That sentence found its mark. I will give him that. For 1 second, the room blurred at the edges, and I was back at a Little League field in 1998, watching Caleb strike out and throw his helmet, watching myself lecture him about sportsmanship when maybe what he needed was my arm around his shoulders. Parents can do the right thing badly. That is one of the secret punishments of getting old. But a wound is not a deed. Pain does not grant title. I leaned forward. Caleb, did I sign that power of attorney? He looked at Ethan, then at Priya, then at me. You authorized me. That is not what I asked. You knew what needed to happen. That is not what I asked. His fingers tapped once against the glass. You're confused. I went very, very quiet. The room felt smaller. Even the fake plant seemed to be paying attention. Ethan slid a copy of the POA across the table. Mr. Mercer, for the record. Is this your signature? I looked at it. No, Caleb said. Dad, I kept my eyes on the page. No, I said again. It is not. Priya's face changed. Not dramatically. Professionally. The warmth left her like someone had opened a door in winter. Ethan placed another document beside it. Mr. Mercer, were you physically present before Denise K. Waller, notary public, in Asheville, North Carolina, on October 28 at 4:15 p.m. No. Caleb's chair creaked. Ethan set down the dental receipt, the appointment confirmation, and the pharmacy charge. Can you account for your location? Yes, Caleb whispered. This is insane. Marlene spoke for the first time. No, honey, this is organized. I will not be taking questions about how much I loved that woman in that moment. Priya folded her hands. Mr. Caleb Mercer, did you present this power of attorney to our office as valid? Caleb's eyes moved around the room, searching for an exit that did not look like running. I presented documents I believed were valid. Did your father appear before the notary? I was told. By whom? Ethan asked. Caleb stopped. The silence had weight to it. He looked at me then, not angry now, not fully afraid. Something worse. Betrayed. As if I had embarrassed him by noticing the knife. Dad, he said softly, you don't understand what kind of pressure I'm under. I thought about Margaret's note. Protect the house first and forgive me later. I understand pressure, I said. Pressure is not permission. His hand went to his watch, thumb rubbing the edge. I was going to pay it back. You were selling a house that was not yours to repay money you borrowed without telling anyone. I was trying to save what I built. No, I said. You were trying to save how people see you. That landed. His hand froze. For a moment, Caleb looked exactly like he had at 19 when he backed my Buick into the mailbox and tried to blame a delivery truck. Same mouth, same eyes, same hope that confidence could outrun consequence. Then Ethan opened the trust binder, the original one, Margaret's handwriting on the tab. Caleb saw it, and something small in his face collapsed before the rest of him did. This property is held under the Mercer Family Residence Trust, Ethan said. The surviving spouse, Harold Mercer, is sole trustee. No sale, transfer, pledge, or encumbrance may occur without his written approval. Priya looked at Caleb. Caleb looked at me. That's not possible, he said. I touched the Parker pen in my shirt pocket. Your mother made it possible. She never told me. No, his voice sharpened. Desperate now. So what? You're just going to block it? Fine. Block it. Kill the deal. Congratulations. Ethan turned one page. There is another issue. Caleb's eyes narrowed. What issue? Ethan looked at Priya. The buyer, High Lantern Holdings, LLC, is a preservation entity created under Margaret Mercer's estate plan. Its manager of record for transaction approval purposes is Mr. Harold Mercer. Nobody spoke. Caleb stared at Ethan. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny. Because his mind needed a bridge and built the wrong one. You're saying the buyer is Dad. In a manner of speaking, Ethan said. I said, you tried to sell your mother's house to the one entity she created to keep you from selling it. The sentence sat there, plain and terrible. Marlene looked down at her hands. Priya's assistant closed the laptop very slowly. Caleb's face went pale in patches, like color leaving a map. That's a setup. No, I said. That's planning. You did this. Your mother did. You let me walk in here. Yes. His eyes filled then, but anger got there first. You let your own son humiliate himself. I leaned back. I let my grown son tell the truth in a room full of documents. He stood so quickly the chair legs scraped the floor. I was desperate. Yes. I was drowning. Yes. You could have helped me. I tried to help you become honest before you needed rescue. You wanted money instead. His mouth trembled once. He hated that it did. I could see him hating it. You're really going to ruin me over a house? I looked at him for a long moment. The boy with the socket wrench, the teenager with the mailbox, the man with forged paper, all of them stood there together, and I loved one of them so much it almost made me stupid. Then I uncapped Margaret's Parker pen. The tiny dent near the clip caught the light. I am not ruining you, I said. I am stopping you. Ethan handed Priya a formal notice objecting to the validity of the POA and suspending the transaction. He also handed Caleb a copy of a civil preservation demand, a notice to retain records, and a letter requiring return of all documents removed from Linden Avenue. Caleb did not take them at first. His hand was still frozen at his side. Then Priya said, very gently, "Mr. Mercer, you should accept the documents." He did. The papers shook once in his grip. Not much. Enough. And then came the last thing he did not know. Ethan turned to me. "Mr. Mercer, do you want to inform him, or shall I?" Caleb looked up. "Inform me of what?" I capped the pen. "Your mother left a separate clause," I said. "Any beneficiary who attempts to fraudulently transfer, encumber, or force the sale of the residence forfeits discretionary distributions connected to that asset." He stared at me. "That can't be enforceable." Ethan's voice was calm. "It is. How much?" No apology. "Not first. Not yet." "How much?" That told me where he still was. I looked at my son and felt something old in me close its doors for the night. "Enough," I said. Caleb sank back into the chair. For the first time since he was a boy, he looked smaller than the room. Outside the glass wall, someone in the hallway laughed at something ordinary. A copier beeped. The world continued, rude as ever. Caleb looked at me, and his voice broke in the middle. "Dad, what am I supposed to do now?" I thought of Margaret under the magnolia tree, yellow raincoat, face turned toward weather she had already forgiven. "Start," I said, with the truth. Caleb did not answer me right away. He sat there with the papers in his hands, staring at the first page as if the words might rearrange themselves into mercy if he waited long enough. His thumb kept rubbing the corner of the notice. Back and forth, back and forth. A boy's motion trapped inside a man's expensive jacket. Priya Patel cleared her throat gently. "I'm suspending this closing," she said. "Blue Ridge Title will retain the file and cooperate with any lawful requests. Mr. Caleb Mercer, I strongly recommend you seek independent counsel before making any further statements." That was polite language for stop digging. Caleb heard it. I saw him hear it. He looked at me one more time. Not with anger now, but with something thinner. Shame, maybe. Fear, certainly. But also resentment, because some people feel betrayed by consequences when consequences finally learn their address. "Dad," he said. One word. For 39 years, that word had opened doors in me. That morning, it found a locked one. "I need the box from your truck," I said. His eyes dropped. "What box?" "Mom office," he swallowed. Marlene's head turned toward him so slowly it could have been measured with a ruler. "You took items from the house last night," she said. "Cardboard box, black marker, passenger side of your truck." Caleb looked at me. "You followed me?" "No," I said. "I watched my house. There is a difference." He did not argue. Not because he agreed. Because every lie available to him had begun to cost too much. We walked out together. Ethan came with us, and so did Priya's assistant, carrying a simple inventory form on a clipboard. The elevator ride down was quiet enough to hear Caleb breathing through his nose. Outside, downtown Asheville was doing what downtown Asheville does at 11:18 on a Friday morning. Tourists with paper coffee cups, a delivery van blocking half a lane, a man in a knit cap playing guitar badly near the corner and somehow making money at it. The world has terrible timing. Caleb unlocked the F-150. The box was on the back seat. He lifted it with both hands and gave it to me. Not shoved, not tossed. Gave. That mattered. Not enough. But it mattered. Inside were Margaret's recipe cards, 2 folders of old insurance papers, a framed photograph of Emily and Caleb on the Linden porch in 1994, and Margaret's small brass letter opener shaped like a heron. At the bottom was her green notebook, the one where she tracked grocery spending from 1,986 until the month she got too tired to write. I touched the notebook and felt my chest do that strange thing again. Not breaking, not healing, something in between, like a floorboard settling under weight. "Why this?" I asked. Caleb looked away. "I thought there might be something useful." "Useful? I mean documents," Marlene said. "And recipe cards?" He closed his eyes. "I don't know. That was the first honest answer he gave all day. Ethan documented the return of the box. Caleb signed the inventory with a title company pen, black ink. His signature was sharp and angry. Mine, when I signed below as receiving party, had the high crooked H Margaret used to tease me about. By 12:06, the sale was dead. By 3:40, Denise Waller had submitted a written statement through her own attorney, admitting Caleb had brought her the already signed POA and that I never appeared before her. By Monday, Blue Ridge Title had frozen the entire file. By Wednesday, Victor Sloan's attorney sent Caleb a demand letter I was not supposed to see but did, because creditors are like raccoons. They move with intent. Emily came to my house that Thursday evening with chicken soup in a glass container and her school tote still over one shoulder. She set the soup on my counter, then stood there looking at me like she was deciding whether I was a father or a cracked vase. "Are you okay?" she asked. "No," she nodded. "Good. I was hoping you wouldn't say fine." I almost laughed. She hugged me then, and I held on longer than I meant to. She smelled faintly like dry erase markers and lavender hand soap. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "He called me," she said. "What did he say?" "That he made a mistake." I waited. "That you trapped him." There it was. People who build the hallway often blame you for turning on the light. "What did you say?" I asked. Emily looked down at her hands. "I said Mom trapped him. You just showed up. I will not be taking questions about how proud I was of my daughter in that moment." The weeks that followed were not dramatic in the way people want stories to be dramatic. There was no shouting on the lawn, no police car in the driveway, no family dinner where someone knocked over a wine glass and confessed everything between the salad and the roast. There were emails. There were certified letters. There were meetings in Ethan's office where the coffee tasted like old pencils. There was a civil claim filed to preserve the trust, recover legal fees, and formally disqualify Caleb from any discretionary benefit tied to the Linden Avenue property. There was a separate referral concerning the forged power of attorney and improper notarization. I will not dress that up. Caleb had done something serious. Serious things have serious rooms attached to them. But I did not ask Ethan to destroy him. I could have pushed harder. I could have called every supplier, every client, every church friend, every man who had ever shaken Caleb's hand, and believed the smile. I had enough paper to turn his name into a warning. I did not. Not because he deserved softness, because Margaret's note did not say punish. It said protect. Cleverness is fast. What I do is slow. And slow gave me time to remember that justice and appetite can start to look alike if you feed them from the same bowl. Caleb lost Mercer Ridge renovations anyway. Not overnight. Worse than overnight. Piece by piece. The supplier lien became public. 2 investors withdrew. Victor Sloan took what he could take. 3 employees left before Thanksgiving. The F-150 disappeared from his driveway in December. By January, the office lease was gone, and Caleb was working as a project manager for a contractor in Hendersonville under a man he once called small time. He hated that. I know, because he told me. He came to Linden Avenue on a cold Saturday in February. Not with a lawyer, not with a folder. Just him, wearing jeans and an old Carhartt jacket I recognized from before his catalog life began. I was on the porch, replacing a loose screw in the railing. The magnolia tree was bare except for a few stubborn leaves. My hands were cold. Margaret's Parker pen was in my shirt pocket out of habit, though no sane man needs a fountain pen to fix a railing. Caleb stopped at the bottom step. "Can I come up?" I looked at him. Then I moved my toolbox aside. He climbed the steps slowly. For a while, neither of us spoke. A truck passed. "Somewhere down the block, Mrs." Dempsey's dog barked at something that was probably not a threat but had hurt his feelings. Caleb looked at the railing. "Still loose?" "Less now." He nodded. "I'm sorry." The words came out rough. Not polished. Not useful. Just there. I kept the screwdriver in my hand. "For what?" His jaw tightened. "All of it. That's a large box." "I know. Open it." He looked at me then. and for a moment I saw the boy again. Not innocent, not absolved, just young somewhere under the damage. "I lied," he said. "I forged your name. I used Mom like an excuse. I told myself I was saving the business, but I was saving my pride." The screwdriver felt heavy in my palm. He breathed in. "And I thought if I made it happen fast enough, you'd forgive me because it was already done." That was the truth. Ugly. Late. But truth. I nodded once. "Thank you." His face changed, confused. "That's it? That's what you get today." He looked toward the magnolia tree. "Do you hate me?" That question was not fair. Children ask parents questions with knives inside them and call it vulnerability. "No," I said. His shoulders dropped. "But I don't trust you." They came back up. "That's worse." "Yes." He wiped his mouth with one hand. "What do I do?" "You live with it. You make restitution where the court tells you. You apologize to your sister without asking her to comfort you. You stop calling desperation love. You become the kind of man who does not need his father to supervise his honesty." He looked down. "Can we ever be normal again?" I almost said yes because I wanted to. Age does not cure that. Fathers still reach for bandages even when the wound needs air. Instead, I said, "No." His eyes lifted. "We can be something else," I said. "Maybe civil, maybe careful, maybe better than false. But not what we were." He nodded like it hurt going down. "Good. Some medicine should." I did not sell Linden Avenue that spring. I thought about it. More than once. The house was still too much. The west gutter still had opinions. The upstairs bathroom leak returned in April with the confidence of a man who had been invited. But I kept going over there twice a week, opening windows, sweeping the porch, cutting back the hydrangeas. Then, in June, Emily asked if she could bring her students to see Margaret's garden. They were doing a unit on local history and community spaces. 23 fourth graders arrived in a bus that sounded like it had lost an argument with a hill. They stood under the magnolia tree while Emily told them how old houses carry stories if people bother to listen. One little girl asked, "Is the tree famous?" Emily looked at me. I said, "Only to us." The girl considered that, then nodded like it was the better kind. That fall, I signed papers turning the house into a small educational trust space for Emily's school and 2 local community groups. Not a museum. Caleb was wrong about that. A living house. Children read on the porch. Neighbors used the dining room for tutoring. Margaret's recipe cards were copied and framed in the kitchen, crooked on purpose, because perfect decorations still make a house look nervous. Caleb came once to repair the back steps. He did good work. We spoke for 11 minutes. Civil. That was enough. Some days I wonder if I did the right thing. Most days I know I did. That is enough too. I do not regret stopping him. I regret that he gave me something to stop. On the first anniversary of the failed closing, I went to Linden Avenue at 10:30 in the morning. Same time, different room. I stood under the magnolia tree with Margaret's Parker pen in my pocket and her green grocery notebook in my hand. The tree was blooming. White flowers, thick leaves, all that foolish beauty my wife had trusted before she even saw the upstairs bathroom. I opened the notebook to a blank page near the back and wrote one sentence with her old pen, "Protected." The ink came out a little uneven at first. Fountain pens are stubborn when they have been sitting too long. People can be that way too. Then I closed the notebook, put it back in the kitchen drawer, and stood there for a minute in the quiet house. "Got it, Margaret," I said. Not got him. Got it. There is a difference. If you liked this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. And as always, thank you for being a part of this sphere.